back, friends. Welcome back, friends. Uh, the laws. So we're picking up with nominalism and the thumbprint of God on the reality of things, and that really is true. The glory of kings is to search a matter out. You know, that Proverbs or Psalms.
Right. Yeah.
The wisdom literature, and some things have an incredible abundance of markers to the divine. Carbon. I mean, I don't think we've said all that can be said about carbon, and I don't know if we ever will be able to, you know. So,
I mean, what an amazing mineral. I mean, element, carbon. You know, how astounding, right? The even just the permutations within it itself that we can visibly see, that it can go from being a nothing to the most magnificent of stones. I mean, how can something that could be so ugly become something so beautiful, right? I mean, I was actually talking to my kids yesterday, and I said, and I think that this goes to essence, right? Is that Satan hides hideousness within beauty, right? He always shows us the beautiful face, but only God alone can hide beauty inside of hideousness.
That's right. And the cross is your example, and it might be coming to it, but that's right. That's the cross. There is nothing more hideous than the creature crucifying most horrendously their creator. And it was that act that brought redemption to each and every human person, past, present, and to come. Nothing more beautiful and nothing more hideous at the same time. That's right.
Right. Satan hides death within life, and God is able to hide death. I mean, Satan hides death within life, and God can hide life within death.
That's right, with the resurrection.
Right.
Nature, a principle or cause of being at rest in the thing according to what it is. That was Aristotle's conception of nature. Here, there is nothing in the hard little things. So some people, materialist, and that's really the atomists, which is that's a pre-Socratic, and there's lectures about that. I have writing on that. Is that there's nothing really in this thing except hard little pellets being pushed around by forces extrinsic to it. Right. Saint John Paul II in Evangelium Vitae number 58 calls modern man's attention to the corruption of language. Right. We need now more than ever to have the courage to look the truth in the eye and to call things by their proper name. This is paragraph 58. Without yielding to convenient compromises or to the temptation of self-deception. That was the temptation of Duns Scotus. That was the temptation of William Auckland. That's the temptation of all students who encounter this mysterious concept of form. Right. It is convenient to compromise, and there is a tremendous temptation for self-deception. But in this case, because the Holy Father is talking about something much more important than roses, he's talking about in the case of abortion. Right. And of course, Sarah and I, we were talking about, which ties directly to the nature of the person.
Well, and it's very interesting too, because, you know, what year did he write Evangelium Vitae? 92?
Yeah.
89? Somewhere around there, right? I mean, the world was not, we were still at that point arguing over the humanity of the unborn child. 4D ultrasounds were yet to be discovered, right, where we were going to actually be able to add time to the image of the radiography and actually be able to see.
1995.
95, right? And I mean, just in terms of like the things that are veiled from us, right, that become unveiled and give us more information. But all of this information now that we are able to see living within inside the womb, there is no person who has not embraced this will over the intellect, right, who has not embraced that, is capable of visibly looking at the picture of an infant in the womb in an ultrasound image and seeing a child, right? Because a thing, the form of a thing tells us what its nature is. We can see that, right? But the nominalist does not want to see a baby there. And so he exerts his will, his wish for that, his volition, his will for that to be other. And because he is powerful, right, the voluntarism of his will, that, and when we say voluntary, that comes from volonté, or will, the will of the person. You know, it's not like, just so people understand when we define these terms, volunteerism, right, in American English means that we go out, we do something philanthropic with ourselves, right? We choose to volunteer to clean up our neighborhood. Well, that is not the voluntarism that we are speaking of right now. What we are talking about is the triumph of the will over the intellect. So that person who desires for that image on the screen to not be a baby has simply said, I will it to be so, and now he has power over it and can choose to end its life. Or if you're of the mindset that you wanted to see a baby there, right, then you can let that baby come into being. But it's your voluntarism, it's your volonté, it's your will that says this is a child or this is not a child. Okay, that was 1995. But where are we now, right? And I don't think that John Paul ever imagined the rise of the transgender philosophy, that same psychosis that permitted someone to be able to influence their will over an unborn child was going to take that same will and use it over himself, right? That is not this, the words to prevent it from happening are already present for us in Evangelium Vitae. But he never was able to name that thing, because we don't name something before we encounter it.
That's correct. That is right. That's exactly right. It's one kind of thing, man. Augustine, Latin term, beauty, species. So universal, it's a concept of things. It's a predicate of many individuals. Intuitive cognition, abstractive cognition are two characteristics of knowledge in epistemology. Intuitive cognition, the intellect at once judges it to exist and evidently knows it to exist. That's what Sarah said. You encounter the thing, you have intuitive cognition, you know it. Abstractive cognition, which it cannot be evidently known of a thing whether it exists or does not exist. And in this way, abstractive cognition is opposed to intuitive cognitions.
Right.
Universals, they are simply and only a fiction made up by the mind, not chimera, which this galactic connection of the universal and to reality is what is most important. So the big questions then come: do universals exist? What are universals, and how did universals come to be? Ultra realist, Plato, Porphyry, Boethius, William of Champeau. Truth must exist more perfectly than instances of it. So lastingness of theirs, a heaven of forms, the realm of the forms. And so we cannot sense it, but we can reason to its existence. So that was where the abstractive cognition would come in.
Right.
The area where Sarah and I have camped out, we're in the realists. That's with Aristotle, Augustine, Anselm, Aquinas, Albert, and Peter Lombard. Right. With the mind, so that truth is the correspondence of the mind to the thing. The mind borrows is the form of the thing. Real relationship between universal concepts and extra mental terms they signify. There is a real connection between the mental concept, the universal, and the thing these terms, these names signify. And like Aristotle, the mind was capable of drawing away the intelligible conditions of form or form of the thing, much like the senses draw away sensible conditions. So just like when we see a rose, we can take away the sensible, the smell, the color, so forth. The mind can take the concept of rose in total and understand it. So realists argue that the human mind can draw away from the form intelligible conditions of the thing, and what it communicates is called a species or a likeness of itself. Only human beings. So
Right.
that is a cat's not going to sit there and wonder about the nature of moths. They're just not going to sit there and worry about that. Only human beings are rationally tuned to receive and understand these intelligible conditions. So,
and that's actually that just made me think of something that I thought was kind of unique, is that has always been one of the arguments of homosexualists or people who have same-sex attractions, is that they felt that they were vindicated in saying that it was a condition of genetics that made them as they were, because you could find that in nature, right? That every once in a while you would find this anomalous situation within nature where you would find a coupling between, two females of a species or two males of a species, right? And I think that it's very interesting that they looked so very closely at science to try and find some correlation, although they've never been able to find any real correlation at a genetic level. But now, because now they are moving away from the movement within that level of mental deviation from what is the natural law, right? I mean, because this is voluntarism writing itself onto the human law, right? Which, and by voluntarism we mean assenting the will and that which we wish or desire to be over what actually is, right? We exert a control over that. Whereas now you have the rise of the transgender, who, how you were saying that the cat has no self-reflection, right? So they're never going to be able to find a cat in nature that sees itself as anything other than what it is, right? As it presents in nature. And so consequently, they have to divorce themselves from the reality of nature. Before, the effort was to make their will fit inside of the box of nature, inside the rules of nature, right? But now that voluntarism within modernity has become so strong that they feel confident that they can insert who they are outside of the realms of nature and the natural law, right? They simply say that it is so, and then they demand that that science attest to what they are, right? So as opposed to us being able to go into the world and discover things in the world through science, now we discover things within our intellect and we demand that science recognize it.
That's right. All right. Very good. Very good. All right, my friends, to the next time. Fides et ratio.